Okay. What kind of questions we have? I know our logos are kind of due. I got a few in emails. I'm assuming everybody else is working on them hard and diligently. And you're gonna send those over as soon as you get those finished up. Also reminder, Thursday, we have no class. It's Veterans Day. So holiday on Thursday. All right, questions?
Yeah, I had a question regarding my logo.
Yes.
So I'm pretty much finished creating the logo, like designing it and laying it out.
Yes.
But I encountered an issue where after I vectorized, I pretty much used the pen tool to make my the center part of my logo, and then I vectorized like the borders of it.
Okay.
And for some reason, I'm not able to like sort of erase the vectors. It doesn't allow me to sort of overlap them in a way. I don't know. It's very odd.
Um, why not? Can you show me or share the file with me later?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So get it ready. As soon as I get done my little InDesign talk, um,
Okay.
I'll let you bring it up, and then we can kind of go through step by step and take a look at it
Okay, sounds
firsthand.
good. Thank you.
That'll be the best, I think. All right. Anybody else have issues, problems? Let me give you the email address again, just in case. All right, so you can just send your files over to there. All right, remember Thursday, no class. All right. All right. So anything else before we switch over to InDesign? Looks like we get pretty much everybody in so far. Yeah, pretty close. All right, so let me get my share going and show you kind of what InDesign is and the such and the likes. So InDesign, what is it? It's the little ID. If you haven't downloaded it, get it from your Creative Cloud. I have to do an update, but we'll do that later. What InDesign is, it's basically a desktop publishing or a layout program. So it's designed to put text and images together. And this is actually an InDesign file that I was sent yesterday as a kind of a newsletter in an email. And I know it was done in InDesign. Well, first, because up here on the top, the little email address is ind.adobe.com. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff after that. But what this is telling me is they actually designed this, uploaded it through Adobe, and then added that link to their email to send out to the hundreds of people or thousands of people they email to. So I know for a fact it was done there. And what it does is it lets you, in this case, it's a small magazine, I don't know, 12 pages or so, 17, so it's maybe 20 pages, and allows you to do the layout. So basically you're bringing text and pictures together. It also allows you to preset type and color and things like this type underneath the picture. You can preset these things as kind of standard. So as you start to work these in the future, you're propagating it just by new pictures and new text. And then you can kind of just quickly click and it will change the items to the font that you want, but also the colors and so forth that you want. So there's ways of InDesign is designed to preset things for you. It also has things built in where you can do, in this case here, a link. Okay, so you can click that and it's going to take you to a link. So again, you're building that link into the design itself. Okay, so you can do hyperlinks in there. And again, hyperlinks are if it's going to be a digital format. If it's printed, obviously it would not have that. But you can design things that kind of go through from digital to print and vice versa. I believe that this newsletter, they used to print it. I don't know if they still do. They may have gone purely digital at this point, but you can see hyperlinks that are built into it. And basically you're putting together pictures and text. Now, all the photography, all that kind of stuff, they're all edited still in Photoshop. Anything like an illustration would be typically illustrated in or Illustrator, but you can do some basic illustration kind of work here in Illustrator, I mean InDesign, and we'll show you some of that. Okay, but again, it's not primarily designed for that, but the idea of boxes and colors and those kind of things, that's definitely totally an InDesign thing. Okay, so again, you can put it together, create all kinds of content. You can kind of have basically templates or style sheets that you want to set up. Okay, and then they have things like this page. They keep this page the same, and these are hyperlinks within here because my cursor turns into a hand. And again, they'll just keep this, and every time they'll add that to it, they'll change things like fall 2021 and the page number depending on what page it's going to be on. Okay, and then they send them out in this case. Okay, now again, I don't know if they're actually printing them at this point. They may want purely digital just from time, but also from a economical and environmentally friendly kind of way, right? I mean, you're not printing the paper, you're not mailing it, you're not postage, all those kind of things that are going to in turn save money, and this is, you know, for a nonprofit. So and again, this is a very, very typical kind of InDesign layout. So let's kind of go through how to do some of these basic things, and we'll get into this and we'll come up with a project as we finish up the semester here. Okay, any questions before we dive in? You there? Okay, everybody's good. All right. All right, so let's kind of get into some of the details. So this window, when you start InDesign, should look pretty familiar. Basically, what do you want to do? And the thing that's kind of cool is there are, we call presets here. You can pick your designs. Okay. They also have built in some templates, okay, which you can download through Adobe, a book jacket, resumes, right? That's going to come in handy. Flyers, brochures, holiday card, whatever. So these are all kind of like templates that you can download and use. And again, they're starting points, right? They're where you're going to start to lay out, and they're going to be, you know, you're going to go in and modify dramatically, but there's things in here to get you going, right? So you don't have to, you know, kind of make it all up. There's things that are going to get you working out. And as you start to obviously get more proficient with design, you know, these things really just truly become a kind of a starting point, and you're going to work it from there. So we're going to work up some layouts, and I'll go through that with you. And then they also have some basic web stuff. A lot of it's for mocking up, and they have some mobile if you want to do some kind of mobile. Probably, I don't know if they have it yet, but like some slideshows, if you're going to work those up potentially into LinkedIn or something like that. And it does some interactive for the iPad. Okay, so there are some possibilities with that, and again, through hyperlinks and so forth. So we're just going to do a basic print letter. And over here it gives you your basic sizes, 8.5 by 11. You can tell it how many pages. I'm going to preset this to say we're at 5 pages. And then we have here the columns and the margins. So the columns are how many columns are on a page. I'm going to push this up to 3. Okay, and down here's the preview. So it popped up already behind me, but that's kind of showing you what it is. There's 3 columns with a little gutter, which is this gap between the columns. Okay, none of these lines show when you print. Okay, so these are just simply here to help you to lay out your objects. And then the margins are the top and bottom, this outer area. Okay, it could be less, could be more, but 1/2 inch is probably a good way to get started. And we are in a vertical format for portrait. Okay, you can also tell it to give it text frames. I'm not going to do that. We're going to build those in ourselves, but you can do that as an option. And then also facing pages, meaning they're front, back, and I'll show you that as we go. So I'm going to hit create. and it created it here. Now you're only seeing one page, but if I click on my little pages tab over here, you can see I have page 1, page 2, 3, page 4, and 5. So these are spreads. Okay, so the pages are side by side. So if they print, you get that full view of what's going on. So let's go through some of the basic tools, interface and such. And if I jump ahead too fast, or there's something you're not like, what was that? Just tell me and we'll go back through it. We're not going to get through all of it today, but I want to give us some basics of InDesign. Okay. So who's used InDesign before? Anybody?
I have, for making a resume and projects.
Okay. So tell me about your experience. Did you like it? Was it work? What was it?
At first, it was the most complicated program for me. But after that, like for one of the classes I'm taking, it's actually really nice. Surprisingly, it makes it a lot more easier. And at times I feel like it's better than Photoshop, obviously for, different things.
Yeah.
That one's editing. This one is just, I guess, editing too, but just creating pages,
Yeah.
the designs. But yeah.
I think that experience is pretty normal. Like at first you're like, oh my God, what is this? It's so confusing. And then once you start to get it, you're like, oh my God, this is so easy. And it allows you to be creative and really have full control over everything. I don't even like Microsoft Word. I have it somewhere on the computer. If I had to open it, I would. But 99.999% of the time, I'm on InDesign and I can do it all here. So think of like Microsoft Word as kind of dummies in InDesign. It's much more complicated. It's not as intuitive as you start to work with it, and it doesn't give you the options that InDesign definitely would have. So InDesign was created to make books. I mean, that's really what it does. It's a desktop publishing. It's a layout program. And it's, I'm going to say 20 some years old. They're about that, maybe a little bit less. And it was designed so you can do multi-page documents, meaning hundreds of pages. So I can guarantee you any book you've been reading, if you read a book lately, it was laid out in InDesign. If you read the newspaper or a magazine, it was done in InDesign. If you got a brochure in the mail, it was probably done in InDesign. Okay, it is a very, very complex but adaptable program that's being used pretty much in everything that's, we'll say, printed today. Again, you might print directly from Illustrator for a flyer or, I don't know, a postage stamp or something that you designed. But for the most part, it's InDesign. So yes, I do my stickers and my t-shirt designs in Photoshop and or Illustrator. But if I'm doing any kind of major text work, whether it be just one page, like a resume or maybe a sales sheet or pricing sheet, I go to InDesign. If it's multiple pages, meaning a little flyer, a book, a little brochure, all that is going to be done in InDesign also. Okay, so it allows you to bring it all together quickly. So I'm going to go through a couple of quick things today. Basically, we're going to add text to a page. We're going to add a couple pictures. And we're going to just start with that, right? We're going to take it slow because it can be an overwhelming program, but I'm going to kind of break it down in kind of simple forms for you. So number one, we've got the pages, and we're on page 1 because here it's highlighted at page 1. If I go to page 2, now you see we're on 2, 3. If I scroll over, you can see there's the second and a third page both together. And then I scroll down to page 4 or 5, that's here. Okay, so this over here will give you a kind of a guide to where you are on your document. It also will tell you down here, so page 1, but I can also skip, in that case, to 5 or to 4 down here. So I don't have to necessarily open this tab. I can also jump down here. Okay, so it's just kind of ways to navigate within InDesign. Now, these should look pretty familiar, right? There's a select, direct select, right? Those are the same as we've been having in our other programs. Don't worry about the page tool. This is a gap. This is designed to give you space between stuff. We'll get into that. Content, don't worry about that. Type tool, we'll do that. There's a pen tool for pen, pencil for doing basic drawings and a line. And there's shapes. Okay, so there's rectangular, and there's also shapes down here, and we'll go through the difference between the two. They look the same, and they actually work the same, but visually they just look a little bit different as you're laying things out to help you. And then there's additional things, gradients and stuff like this down here. Again, we'll get to some of those things as needed. There's a color over here, and you'll notice it does CMYK and then RGB. So it's really basic colors, but you can add colors to this. Okay, so it doesn't give you that full gamut of colors like you would get, say, in Illustrator, but you can, double click on a swatch, and then you can come and process those colors down, okay, to whatever you want. You can also click over here and you get the pickers that we were used to working with, okay? And you can add that to your thing. Now this is the fill and this is the stroke, so very much the same as you would find in Illustrator. Same thing up here, same thing, just fill and stroke, okay? And then we're going to get into the properties panel, and these are going to be for adjusting things, okay? It also has layers, and the layers work per page. So when we look at layers, and if you're going to be working with layers, and we start to build layers upon layers, say on page 1, when we come back to look at layers on page 2, it'll be blank because there's nothing on that page. So the layers only work with the page that you're on, it's not an additive process. So when you get to page 5, you've got a million layers going on. Okay, so we have layers that we can work with. There's typing issues, and then there's layout and blend modes and Pathfinder, those type of things. So there's a lot of things that are very, very similar to Illustrator, as you'll start to see. All right, so let's start with just kind of putting some text in. And to put text in, because we did not build in text box, and I don't do it usually, you just kind of hit the type tool, and then you can get this, and you just kind of click and drag. And you see I got a box that I'm drawing, and this becomes a type box. Excuse me. And as I draw, you can see I'll get to things where it's going to kind of align. It's going to snap into the guides, and that's snapping in between the guides and the gutter. And it will kind of help you to lay out your guides. Now we can do master pages and put things in. So they're kind of templated out to some degree. But right now I'm just going to kind of draw in some boxes for text. And as you can see here, I draw the second one. You can see it's kind of get this little green hours. That means it's the same as the first one. So right now they're blank. They're not showing anything. And we can put text in there. Under type, there is a thing that says fill with placeholder text. I'm going to click that, and it puts in placeholder text, or dummy text as we call. Their words aren't really words. They're just kind of things put together. It works, but it doesn't work. I mean, it's a good thing for really quick layouts, just to kind of get a feel. But as you start to work it, you're going to want to use real text, because it will help you with the guides and so forth. So we're going to take some text in a little bit. And these text boxes are changeable. I just hit the direct select tool, and I can, enlarge them. I can scale them down, up, whatever I want to do, right? So they are completely adaptable as we go. And again, these guides are simply guides, okay, to help you lay out publications and books. I will tell you, it's harder to read all the way across. Now it's 8.5 by 11, so it's not terrible. But if this was a book, let's say even a textbook, and it was 8.5 by 11 all the way across, I'm going to just move that out of the way and delete it. You'll see it's going to put text all the way across here. That becomes difficult to read. Why? Because when we finish here, our eye's got to go all the way back over here. Okay, and that's a long way for the eye to go and to keep a good pace and rhythm going. So oftentimes you'll see stuff kind of broken in half, where there's 2 columns of text, okay, with some kind of guide or gap in between, okay, because that's easier to read, okay, or it will be broke down, in this case, potentially to 3 columns of text, or maybe 4. 4 might be a bit excessive, but you can do it. Again, it's looking at how many words go across. Typically, you don't want more, maybe, 6 to 10, 6 to 8 words kind of in these columns. They work very nicely that way. You get too big, it gets very, very long. Again, it gets hard to kind of come back across. And there's a reason when you're reading a book, I don't know, Harry Potter, everybody's read Harry Potter. That book is not like huge, okay? It's thick, okay, but they could have made it thinner if they made the pages bigger, but they don't want to make the pages too big because then it becomes harder to read. Because again, your eye gets up to the end of the line, it's got to go way back over to the other side, okay? And it gets just slow and monotonous, and it actually becomes very tiring for the eyes, okay? So if you want to tire yourself out when you're trying to go to sleep, find a book that stretches all the way across, and and your eyes will get tired very quickly and you'll fall asleep. All right, so a text box. Now within the text box, we can obviously select the text. All right, so if you double click with your mouse, you get one word, double click again, you get the line, triple click, keep clicking, you get the paragraph. Okay, and you can kind of, if you keep clicking, it'll do the whole document, in this case, with a whole column of text. All right, so there's ways to kind of work that, and again, it's kind of clicking with the mouse. So I'm going to actually just delete these off of here for now, and I'm going to go grab us some text. Let me draw us a couple text boxes in, and I'm going to go to a web page. LA Times, they always have some stories, and nothing let me see that one. Oh, you dog. Usually their stories are free. Oh, come on. Let me find someplace else then. You're gonna be that way. Trying to get some stories. Man rescued from a cave. All right, this is cool. I don't know, it's about London. Yeah. It's a deep hollow in England. Somebody got trapped. Anyway, so I'm gonna copy stuff. So I'm gonna do the head. Let me do the headline first. All right. So assuming we're gonna get this kind of information typically from the writer, the author, they're gonna print these things up, and I'm just gonna drop it in. And here we got the text. So let me grab the text here. London. I'm gonna copy it in spots. I'm just copying and pasting. So we get an article here.
Quick question.
Yes.
So we're creating these pages and using somebody else's existing text.
Yeah. We're not writers. Typically, we don't. I mean, we write as designers, but I'm, for the sake of demo, I'm just kind of grabbing text. But normally in the real world, somebody's going to give you the file. They're going to email it to you, or as a Word file or something. Say, here's the article, lay it out.
Okay. So for this assignment, though, we're just going to retrieve the text from some other existing document or publication.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you the parameters, but yes.
Okay, very good.
Let's say, and I'm kind of leaning towards, I don't know, some kind of, a magazine, and let's say it's a magazine on power boats, motor boats, whatever, boats. You're going to go to some place on the internet, boats.com, whatever, find a cool article, put it together, grab the text off it, and you'll gather pictures and Photoshop and do what you need to do and bring it all together in design. Does that make sense? So yes, we're gonna acquire this stuff. Okay.
So since it's for school and it's nothing we're going to be selling, we don't have to worry about copyright.
No, and as students, you guys are good to go anyway, because we're kind of learning. So yeah, I
Okay,
wouldn't worry about that.
excellent. Thank you for clarifying.
Uh-huh. All right, so we've got an article, not very long, but it's an article. The man was trapped for 2 days, and we need to start to lay this thing out. So right now it's defaulting to whatever text is preset, and right now it's all Minion Pro. And I've got the article, and it's a 12 point. Typically, when you look at articles, you're going to find things that are in the 10 to 12 point range. It can change, it can vary depending on the typeface, but they're usually in that ballpark. Could be a little more, could be a little bit less, but you're not going to find typically text like this at 7 point would be very difficult to read, or something like at 20 point is going to just be too big, okay, for a story. So anywhere in the 10 to 12 point is a good range. And again, this number, 10 to 12 points, will vary based upon the typeface. But there's a reason why it says 10, 11, 12. The reason they have 11 preset is because somewhere in this range is where most of the stories go, and even 9, right? So 8 gets a little small, but you will find stuff in 9 depending on the story. So here I went to 9, and you see it got pretty small, even though we're looking at it on the page. But if we pull it up to 10, it gets a little better. Pull it up to 11, even better. Okay, and 12 might be okay. And when you find stuff online, a lot of stuff, this stuff is usually even a little bigger. For some reason, when we do online stuff, they go into 12 to 14, 15 point. Okay, just because of how browsers work, it makes it easier to read. And a lot of times the type is adjustable based upon you're on a desktop or you're on a mobile device. Okay, so this stuff will be adaptive as you go. All right, so we dropped in this article that ABC sent to us that they want us to lay it out. And we notice here we have this red square with a cross in it. And this is a warning that InDesign does, and it even says an error down here, right? It basically is checking things as we go. And it will pull up the document. We'll see if it opens up here. I want it on. Okay, so it's telling me there's a text overset text, meaning the text goes off the column, off the page. Okay, so as we're working, you'll get these square with a cross and a red. And what that scan is saying is there's more text someplace. All right, so your column is not big enough. So a couple ways to fix it. One, I can make my box bigger. All right, so by making my text box bigger, yes, see, I got rid of that error message right down here, no errors. Okay. 2, we'll keep, if we want to keep the same text box size, okay, I can make it smaller. Let me pull this down. Okay, so I can take my type, and then I've selected that box, and then come over here and drop it down. In the case, just dropping at 1 point to 11 made it fit within that box. Okay, so again, I got rid of that error message. Okay. Secondly, or thirdly, I can make that box, I'm going to put it big, make it bigger. I can make the box wider. And just by making it wider, you see where we've kind of extended it across and we got rid of that error. Okay, but again, these are all design decisions you want to do. The third way, or fourth way, I should say, is to make the text go to another column. So I'm going to do another text box, T, and I'm going to just draw a box. And I'm going to select the red box with the plus in it. When I click it, I get this little preloaded thing. And what this is saying is I'm preloading the text, and wherever I click into the next text box, it will go. So I'm going to click on the text box here, and you can see it now has continued to text over into the next box. And these two text, or these two columns are linked now. So if I make a change in the first column, even just making it smaller, you see the text pushes over. Okay. If I add in a gap, it pushes over. Okay. So these two are linked together now. So whatever I do on one will affect the other. Okay. So whether it be the idea of selecting all and changing the typeface. Okay, it changes, whether it be scale. Okay, it changes. Whether it be the leading, which is the space between lines. Okay, I can do that. You can see it stretches it out. And I can do this here. Auto will kind of give it whatever the default was set for that typeface. It may or may not be good. It can also make it less if you might want to tighten it up for some reason. Okay, watch, be careful that you don't get too close with your leading. I'm zooming in, Command plus, that the letters start to touch each other from the line above or the line below. Okay, that's awkward and usually is not done except in some kind of artistic way. Okay, but in this case, it wouldn't be appropriate. So you want to have that up a little bit. So that's 13. It's very, very close. Up to 14. That works. Okay. Typically, the leading is at or above your typeface size. So in this case, I'm 13. My leading's at 14. At 13, it still works. It's very, very close. Again, depends on the typeface, but that gives you a ballpark number. That if you were 13, this would be a 14. If this was at 20 points, my leading would probably have to be 19, 20, 21, somewhere in there. So I'm going to push it up to 18, 19, 20. And we can see our leading's at 14, that Y, those letters are overlapping. And if I push this leading up to 18, you can see now we're 20 and 18. We're still below, right? This G descends down into the H. So I'm going to actually have to make it up a little bit more. So 20, 20. Yeah, we're right there. Maybe even 21, just to kind of give it a little bit more gap. So that gives you kind of a ballpark of where you want to go. So depending on as you're working and you're changing typefaces, you can kind of manually do that. Or you can leave it on auto and see where it comes out. And it tells you where it is. The 24 point is what was preset for this typeface when it's at 20. Okay, and as I raise that typeface up, that automatically will also go up. Okay, in this case, to 28 point. Okay, and you'll notice here, as we kept making this thing bigger, it got pushed off and we got another box. So I can easily kind of come over here and build a third box in. And I'm going to select that direct select tool, click that arrow, I've loaded it, and boom, now I put over. It goes on, right? So now I can kind of come down and we're going to go, I want to put another box down on page 2. I'm just going to draw a box. I'm not worried about it. I'll come back to it in a second. And I'm going to come over here. You got this red box. I loaded it and dropped it, and now it came over here. So now I'm moving text from the first page to the second page. And now I still don't have it. I can still now make another column of text in here and load this up. Direct select tool. Boom, and it's dropping over, and it keeps going. Looks like, well, looks like we finally made it to the end there. Okay, so it keeps going. So whatever gets done up in the beginning now will move the text over on this page. So when I'm on page 1, pages back to page 1, if I put in a gap, where's the end of the here a gap? There's a gap between. As I do that, you'll see on page 2. This article got longer, okay, because I've made a change on page 1. So in this case, because everything is linked, it will adjust. And likewise, if I select it all and come back to my typeface size and put it back to 12, you can see it pulled it back. Those columns are still there, okay, but there's nothing in it. Okay, so if I add more text, it will then bleed off into those areas. Okay, so they're linked together. Questions on that? Does that make sense? How we can make text continue on? Everybody, we're good? All right, so I'm going to drop in a title now, and we're gonna, let me just find, I'm going to use a serif on this. I'm just looking for one where I have a couple options. If you see this like little parentheses next to a type name, that shows you how many variables are. So in this case, there are 91 different variations of this typeface in there. That's a lot, okay? Huge amount, okay? Something like 3 or 2, there's only usually, in this case, regular or thin. Sometimes it's a bold and normal, that type of thing, okay? Bold, italic, regular. Okay, so looking at those numbers can give you an idea as to, you know, how good that typeface is. A lot of times you want to have some options, simply because as you get into things like doing captions or pull quotes, or you're kind of putting, you know, little bylines or little subheads and so forth, having those options is good. So you keep the same typeface, you just go bigger or smaller, and you can change the weight. So from regular to light to italic to medium, etc. So I'm going to go with a bold here for the medium for that title. Okay, and of course the title I want to be bigger. I want to grab your eye, and I'm just kind of looking at this, and I'm just pumping it up. Right now we're at 20, 21 point. That's too much. Well, maybe that 22 point. No, I don't like that. I don't like that hyphenation going on up there. Okay, and you can do things in InDesign where you can tell it to hyphenate, not to hyphenate, etc. We'll get into that. So it is very, very adaptable in that particular case. All right, so now we've got the title up here. We've got 2 columns of text. We do have an extra gap up here because there is gaps put in between paragraphs. So for paragraphing, kind of 3 ways of doing it. One is just to kind of leave a blank. Okay, that's kind of the more formal, or it's really the informal, but really has become the preferred way of doing things nowadays. So you just have a gap between paragraphs. Other ways of that are to indent. Okay, so when you indent, it's typically like 3 to 4 spaces, and we can preset that. Okay, but it's a small one, it's not a tab, because if you hit tab, you see it pushes it way over, and that's like 8 spaces. That's just too much. Okay, so typically a indent is 3 to 4 spaces, and we can kind of preset that, okay, with InDesign. Okay, and then then you'll find also the indent with no gap. Okay, it's kind of redundant to do the gap and the indent. Okay, so you don't usually see the 2 done together. It's either the gap or an indent for most times. Okay, and again, most times people are doing the gap now. That's kind of the preferred way. It's kind of been the preferred way for a couple decades now, just because it makes it easier to read. But you will sometimes find the indent, or you might find the indent and the gap. Okay, so that's, both of those would kind of be acceptable. Okay, questions on that kind of indenting, paragraphing, suggestions there? Okay. All right, also with this, I'm going to get that back out. We have the typical paragraphing: right, left, center, justified. So let me just kind of go through what those are and what they look like. So this is left, and that's normal, right? There's left, and we have this edge over here. They call this the rag. Okay, so it's like rag. It's like the edge of something. Okay, this will be center. This will be right. Okay, so you have a, again, it's kind of awkward to have it this way, but you might use this for like some kind of captioning or something like that. This is justified with the last line turned off. Okay, because if we put it on full justify, which we'll do in a minute here, you'll see it creates a lot of gaps, what we call rivers. okay, which will be kind of weird things coming through your type. We have center justified, we have right justified, okay, and then we have justify. And by justifying, you see we get even bigger gaps between the words. So here's full justified, and here is full justified with the last line turned off. Okay, so it creates less gapping between. Again, this is kind of, if you're going to do justified, this is typically what you do. Okay. And then you can have some presets over here to align to a spine, meaning a line along the middle of the page or off the page. Okay, so it's done, but typically we're just kind of doing it this way. Okay, so now these are justified, and we don't have too much of a gap. If we enlarge the type here, you're going to see we're going to get some gaps coming in here. Let me just do this, and I'm going to do full justified. What you end up getting is, over here is a pretty good example. See how far apart these words are? It's just kind of unnatural. Okay, just because the computer's kind of making things push out to the edges of our columns, and it just becomes awkward to read, but also visually looks awkward. So to combat that, we would typically go with a justified with the last line unjustified. Okay, and you get a better, smoother transition and gaps between things. Now you do have to watch. You don't want to have too much of a, just like a word or a letter dropping below. And we can preset that. There's a lot of parameters that we can set up in InDesign, which we haven't done yet in this, but you can do that. Okay. Now I'm going to just kind of, I just want to make this thing a little bit longer. I'm just dropping in that paragraph one more time, a couple times, just to give us 3 columns of text. Okay. And you can kind of, again, adjust those, and you can see that goes off. Now, things like this word emergency services, you don't want to have these words just kind of hanging. Okay. So you typically want to have 2 words or 2 lines of text to make it look comfortable. So things we can do to adjust that is we can either add space, we can increase the leading, the space between the lines, we can add space between paragraphs. Again, it might just be a little bit, again, we're doing the leading here, but maybe I just push that up to 19. Okay, over here, I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just kind of pushing it up to give me a little more between it. And now I pushed that over, which was good, but now I got this one, which is kind of ugly. I'm just going to bump that up a little bit. Now, again, it's like keep moving, it's going to push it down, but then we're going to get a big gap here. So sometimes this is where we're just going to kind of increase the leading. You start to get into things where you're just kind of doing certain paragraphs or certain words to do that. Sometimes you even reduce the type down 1/2 point to push this up, or we will kind of adjust the type box. Okay, that pushed it over. So is it more important to line at the top or line at the bottom? Now on this, you see there's an extra gap in there because we had the paragraph returns. We can just kind of simply come up here, highlight that and delete it. And we're actually deleting that space between the paragraphs. If I make this one bigger, you can see that paragraph wasn't there. I have to add that back in, that gap. Okay, so a lot of it's kind of, there's this kind of going back and forth to get things to potentially line up. That's kind of the work of all of this. Any questions on that? Just kind of quick text layout. We'll get much more into this. Don't worry. That kind of making sense. You build a text box, you put your text in it. Okay, and you can adjust your boxes to be bigger or smaller, and you can adjust your type to be whatever it is and size wise. You can also change the color, right? So if you go to fill, just by clicking the color, it makes it that color, right? So you can go back and forth and change the color of your type. By default, the background is white Okay, so it's assuming your paper is white, but you can add colors to the background. And you can also add images to the background here that would be printed. Okay, or you can add brown to simulate that you're going to be working on brown paper. You've spec'd out a paper, it's going to be brown, and you want to see how that looks because it looks different than white, and you might need to change your type colors due to that. Okay, questions on any of that so far? We're going to keep going here. Make sense? Oh, yeah, dude. Perfect sense to me. We're good? You live?
What's that?
You guys okay?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Give me the sign, man. Like, all right? I don't want you to be captive.
Yeah, we're here.
All right, all right. All right, so let's do it real quick. Put a picture in. Okay. Again, you're going to be doing most of your photo work and or illustration work in Illustrator or Photoshop. This is where we kind of bring the image, illustration, photo together with text. In this case, it's the story of the guy who got stuck in the cave. 240 rescuers worked 2 days to get him out. Tumbled into one of the Britain's deepest hollows. You gotta love the British. It's a hollow. It's not a hole. It's a hollow. Great stuff. All right. So let's add a picture. Now, there are 2 boxes here. We can add pictures to both, but let me just kind of go through the differences between these 2 box tools. So here's a box, and I'm going to give it a color so we can see it. And then we're going to do another box over here. And it's got another color. Okay. Let me make this the same color so you can compare contrast. What's the difference between these 2 boxes? Anybody? Are they the same or they're different? One surface set. What do you mean by set? No, they both can. We could both do stuff with that, right? I can. They're both adjustable still. I can still scale them up and down. Okay, so that, and I can do. You know, I could select the direct select points, and I can actually take a point and do stuff, right? So I can still do that kind of stuff. Good guess, though. All right, I'll give it to you. It's like you're like looking at it, you're not gonna ever get it. One has the X, one doesn't. That's it. Otherwise, they're the same. So
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. So what's the difference? Why would we do that? Well, a lot of it is just visual for as you're working. Okay, so if I put this box, I'm going to put these both here, and I'm going to actually put them behind. So I'm selecting them, and I'm going to go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back. So all this stuff is starting to look the same, guys, because it is. Send to the back. So now they're behind the text. The column is on top of this colored box. This one has this box going through it, and it actually becomes a little bit more visually kind of messes with your eye. When it prints, they would be the same. If I was to hit Command P, they would print both magenta. This line, this X does not show up. But when you're laying things out, that X can become kind of confusing for you. Okay, so this one doesn't have it, just so it doesn't kind of create that visual confusion. That's kind of it. It's also for over here, let's say we're going to put a picture in this. Typically, when you put a picture in, there's no fill because it's just a picture. And if I draw this out, we see this X is meaning I know that there's a picture I want to put into this space. If I just put the square in that space, I'm just kind of laying this out. And we'll give it up to, oh, I want to keep defaulting to green. Okay, it basically disappears. You can't see it. You're like, oh, did I put the box in? Do I not have the box? Whatever. And then you start to click around and you got to click right on the edge to get it activated because there's no fill. Nothing. If I don't click on that line, it doesn't even show up at all. Okay. So a lot of it's just kind of visual indicators and clues as you start to work and build things up with that. So I typically will use the no X box. I don't know what you want to call it. Do they have a name up here? Frame tool and tool. Okay, so I would use the frame tool. If I know I'm laying out, I'm going to put pictures in there, and I would use the frame or the tool, a rectangle tool, if I just want it to be kind of a box and a color. Okay, and let's say I want to make this box a color. I'm going to give it a fill. We'll go to the green, go to lights to green, and I want to put that behind this. I'm going to maybe do a little box over here with text in it, and I'm actually going to move that text down here. Okay, so there's this little box, and then I'm going to just have some little text, and we'll call a pull quote. Right, so I'm going to do drawing a box in there, and the man was doing remarkably well. I'm going to just kind of blow that up, right? So it's like kind of this thing you would see. And I'm going to actually change typeface. Okay, so I did one little full quote. The man was doing remarkably well. It's kind of creates some visual interest, right? You were looking through it, it's like, oh, the man was doing well. He must have been okay because he was trapped for 2 days. Okay, so over here, it's just a box to remind me more or less that I have to put a photo in later. Okay, so let's put a photo in really quick. So I've selected the box that I want to put this in. And again, I usually try to pre-draw the boxes, but you can just bring in the pictures, but we'll do that later. Today, we're just going to do the first stages. Bringing it in, okay, and you go to place. So it's not import, it's not whatever, it's place in InDesign. So Command D, I don't know why it's D, because I guess Command P is print, so I couldn't use that. So Command D, it takes you to where you are, and I'm going to go to my desktop. And we have some pictures in here. Typically, JPEGs, TIFFs are what we kind of bring in. It will bring in PSD files. So you can see as I click on a PSD, it brings them in. I can tell you the problem is it gets really, really big, really fast, and you don't want to do that. Okay, like here we have 39 megs. That's going to bring that in. You don't really want that. You know, you want something kind of smaller. You know, here's 50K or whatever the picture would be, 1 meg. So I'm going to open that up. That's the Hollow in England. So I brought the picture in and it looks big. So if I double click on this, we will be able to start to work with this. So right now, we're not worried about text wrap. We'll get into that in a second. But we got to fit this object. And right now, what we're going to do is we're going to select the frame fitting. So I just want to kind of go through some of those with you. So underneath, as you click it, will tell you fill frame proportionally, fill contents proportionally, okay, fit contents to frame, fill frame to contents, center contents, to content aware fit. So these are ways that we can kind of make this picture get into this space. We don't really know the exact size. We can look it up here, 9.4 by 3.66. But in order to make that fit, we can select this. So by doing this, you see it filled it in, but we've got this outer gap, right? And just put it in the gap there. I'm going to undo it. and we can do the fill proportionally. So this is bringing the picture exactly as it would be, but fitting it. So right now you see we have a gap above and below the photo. So it's not quite filling the frame that we created. Okay. This one fills the frame, meaning it will bring it in and enlarge a little bit. This one will scale it to fit. Taking it back to where we were. Okay. This is showing you really how big the picture really is. It's a big picture. Okay, so what it's doing is actually scaling it down to fit into that little box. In this case, it made the frame, the picture frame, as big as the picture itself was. Over here, it made it to fit the frame. I have to go back because of how it's starting to think here. Content aware, it will ultimately, hopefully adjust it to be the way it wants to be to fit into that frame. And let's skip it back a sec. If you do autofill when you're clicking these, it will allow you to adjust. So this fills the frame. And with autofill on, as I make this frame bigger, it makes the picture bigger. Okay. If I had autofill turned off, as I make the frame bigger, the picture did not get bigger, just the frame got bigger. Okay, and I'm going to give the frame a stroke so you can see it out there. Okay, so at this point, I can hit the content fill and it will adjust it to fit that frame. Likewise, when I do this, make the frame smaller, it didn't change the picture, but if I do this again, it will adjust the content fill to fit the frame. Okay. If the auto is turned on, it will do it as you go. Okay. So oftentimes the auto is turned on just to help make life easier. Now, in this case, it's stretching the mountains a little bit. It's not going to visually hurt anything. It's not really distorting too much. If it was somebody's face, you really, really want to be careful, because once you start to stretch the face, people see it. Okay, because that's all we do is look at people. When we look at faces, and if somebody's got a stretched face, trust me, you're going to notice like, wow, they look a little weird. Okay, so even a few percentages bigger will make kind of a weird proportion in your visuals. Okay, and that's how we add a picture and fit the picture. Okay, now other things we can do with this, and I'm going to just really quick, we'll get to text wrap. Let's just say I want to put a box in here. And I'm going to give it another color so we can see that. It's a red box. Now, as I drew that red box in, it's just on top of the text. I can see there's text below. I can't see the text. Okay. So what I want to do is do a text wrap, and this will allow the text to go above or below or around it. So right now, there's no wrap. This will go around the box. Okay. And by doing that, you can see there's no text underneath. It will shift it. And then I also have the basically margins that go around the text wrap. So this is at 0, so I can push this all the way up, and the text type will get really close to the edge. Okay, so right here we see this G is almost touching the box. That's kind of a no-no. You don't want the text to be touching your pictures, or in this case, the colored box. So these are little margins that you can kind of set here. And this is 0.0625. And if you zoom in, you'll see this kind of light blue box that's going around the red one. That's this margin. So if I increase this, you'll see that box gets bigger. Okay, and I can keep increasing that to give me all kinds of gap around that. And we typically will use this a lot of times for something like a photograph. Okay, where we don't want the words to be right on a photograph. And we want to have that text to be a little bit of a gap. Okay, so as I move this up or down, it will kind of adjust the text to keep it out of this kind of imaginary area touching the box. So that's a text wrap. This will wrap around the shape, which is basically the same thing that we're doing right now. We'll get into shapes next time. Right now, this is assuming you have a square box or rectangular box. This is just going to push text up below or below a column. Okay, so if we want to put, you know, a photograph, make this a photograph at the bottom of a column. Okay, I can just kind of do that, and it's going to push everything up. Okay, so it stays above it in a column. It won't let text go below. Okay, it pushes it to the next column. Okay, so it's kind of a text wrap going around a box, and that box could have text in it, or it could also have a picture in it, or it could be a photograph. Okay, right now it's a color, but I'll do Command D, and I pick another picture. You put it in. I'm going to give it the fill that way. No, that's not what I want. Command Z, boom, that puts it in that way. Command Z, puts it in that way, kind of fits the frame proportionally like that. Okay, so now we've got the lightning in there. There is no color. It gives you a fill, but you can't see it because the picture's in there. Okay, if I make the frame bigger, you can start to see that fill. Okay, so typically on photographs, we don't have a fill. We just kind of leave it at none. Okay, like that. All right. Of course, you want to save. Command S. To desktop InDesign document. We're not doing templates here. And this is if it's going to go to some web stuff. So just document and always save images with the page. Yes. Okay. One last thing before we stop here. When you're viewing your pages, right now we've got all these lines and things, and it's little things saying it's linked, and I got the guides. If I go over here, I get normal preview, bleed slug. Don't worry about bleeding slug, but I get normal preview. I also have that up here under performance or screen mode preview. But so if I go to preview, it takes away all those guides. So I can really see what this looks like without any guides or lines or miscellaneous things. This is how it would print. Now, as I click on something, you see the frame for that particular item. But if I off click it, it all goes away. So this way it gives you a little bit cleaner way of looking at the document. Everything is still editable and we can still move things. So I can like select that picture, move it up because like, hey, I want to line up more. I can select this and, you know, scale that up or move that down. So everything is still editable as we're in preview mode. It just gets rid of the lines, okay? Or the guides and all those kind of things. The other thing I want to show you is on the pictures, because imagine this is a 100, 200 page document, and I got a bunch of pictures in there. This is slowing the computer down. Every time it has to re-render a page. So in order to speed things up, there's called a screen performance, or display mode rather. There's high quality, typical, and fast. High quality gives you a really good picture. If I go to typical, and it's not doing it because it's a big picture and we scale it down, it will kind of simplify it, make it more bitmappy. Okay. So if you ever import the photo and you're like, God, it doesn't look clear. I know it's a clear picture. I just worked it up in Photoshop. Check your view and your display performance. If you ever turn it in and it goes, there's blank, it's because you're on the fast display. And what this does is when you're, imagine there's 100 pages, 200 pages, 300 pages, it turns the pictures off so you can scroll quickly and go around. And if you get to that page, you simply turn on the view, okay, the typical or high as you're working. Okay, so it allows the computer to work a lot quicker by turning it off. So if you know it's a good picture and you put it in and it looks bitmappy or blurry, it's probably because of your view display performance is on typical to high. Okay, so high quality should give you as much or really good quality like you were looking at it in Photoshop. Typical will kind of simplify it a little bit, and typically we'll get things a little bit blurry. Again, depends on the resolution of the picture and so forth. Let me see if it does it on this one. That looks pretty good there. Yeah, it's not, it's none of the, neither one of these pictures is really showing a difference. Okay, but you will get that different. I typically keep it on high unless I run into problems, too big a document or something like that, just because it doesn't mess with your mind. You're like, oh God, I know it's a good picture. Looks bad. Why is that looking bad? And you start to think about things you don't need to be thinking about. All right, questions? Questions at all? InDesign 101 today.
I'm still working on my logo.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
is the spec sheet on your website? I didn't see it.
Yeah, the logo is, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll look a little
Yeah,
closer.
it basically save it as a PDF. Make sure your name's on it with Tuesday's class or something like that, Tuesday, Thursday. Email it to me.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. All right, other questions? All right, let me double check the attendance. Looks like everybody's here. Okay. Questions? Anything? All right, so work on the logos. Those that haven't submitted already, get those to me. Remember, Thursday we're at a holiday, so that's a good thing. Open up InDesign, get downloaded if you haven't. Kind of do what we did. Put some text in, put some pictures in, just to kind of get used to that. We're going to get into more of it and the more complexities of it as we go. Okay, but we're not going to get, this thing will do crazy things like indexing and all kinds. We're not going to get into any of that craziness just because of time. But I do want you to be able to open it, do some quick layouts, understand it, and that'll lead you to the next program, next class that we'll end up using InDesign. Okay, so you'll get it again, but I want you to kind of get used to the tool. So no immediate rush on that. Get the logos done. That's our first priority. I will get the spec sheet up for the travel poster. Okay, so if you haven't, or if you haven't already, start that. Okay, and get going on the travel poster, and then we'll meet again next week. We're going to keep things going, and I'll give you the final assignments for both InDesign and for Illustrator. I'll get those written up and hopefully this week get that to you. Okay, questions?
I don't have a question for InDesign, but I do for Illustrator.
Okay.
Okay, right now. Okay. When I save my logos that I want to use for this, save it as a PDF as you requested. Once I save it and then click on it to open it, it makes the view, the look of it like super small, like far away. And when I zoom in, it barely gets enough for you to see it.
Okay.
I don't know why it's doing that.
Well, it could have been how big it was on the page. Let me just do this.
17 by 11.
Yeah, let me just, so we have Illustrator here. I don't know, here's something goofy I was working on. It's not there. So this is an 8.5 by 11 page. If you save this as a PDF, it's going to kind of look like this. But had you, depending on how small, it could be this small because you're working on them, right? It still looks the same. Yeah, and you've just been kind of zooming in a lot. And if I save it, it will save it very small because it is small on the page. Does that make sense? So
yeah,
you can maybe try resizing it on the page, but don't worry, I can zoom in. Okay, it should be okay.
It's not that small. They're all relatively big on there.
And it could also be just your Acrobat is set to look at things small. Okay, so I'm going to just open up. Let me just open up something here.
Even though when I open it up and it goes to the internet and it still shows it as really small.
I don't know, there's something the kid had. So right now, it just, that kind of looks normal, but had it been like preset up here, it just could look really small that way, right? As many pages, but it could just be the default setting. Whatever you have it on or had it on, it goes to that.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is, when I viewed on there, how you first had it when you loaded it up,
Uh-huh.
you're like, okay, that looks great. That's how it looks. But then once I save it as a PDF, and then open it, and then where it opens up onto the internet browser,
Uh-huh.
it makes the viewing of it like really small, like it's far away.
Don't worry about it. Send it to me. And you could just make a note on the email. Hey, it was looking weird, right? Looking too small. I'll remember, oh yeah, we had this discussion. If I have any issues, I'll email you back on, hey, save it this way so I can see it, or I can see it fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Okay, we'll figure it out, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be a big deal.
It isn't.
Okay. Anybody else? Who wanted to share? Let me get my share going here. I want to share, and that should be okay. Didn't somebody have a question? Start a class?
Yeah, that was me.
Okay.
I had an issue where I wasn't able to erase my vector lines and all
Okay.
that for some reason, but I was just messing around with my logo during class, and for some reason it kind of fixed itself. I mean,
Okay. So it's working.
I don't know if why Adobe does that, but I don't know. Now that I erased my certain vector lines, there's like this weird little residual kind of like lineage going on right now. I don't know. After the erasing, so is it possible if I can share my screen and?
Yeah, go ahead and share. You should be able to share. There you go. Nice.
Okay, so this is going to be my logo.
Oh,
right here.
beautiful. Really nice.
And I was just trying to erase his arms so that they came. Oh, wait, do not use it. Okay. I was just trying to erase his arms so that I could actually, have them popping over the frame that he's in. And now that there's this weird
Oh yeah.
stuff going on.
How did you draw that character?
What's that?
Was that a vector drawing?
Yeah, it's a vector.
Okay. And how did you get rid of, it looks like was there an eraser tool that you used?
Yeah, I just tried using the eraser right now, and it got rid of, the frame around his arm, but yeah,
Yeah.
left that.
I think that's residual from that.
Okay.
So, ultimately, you probably have to go back and, if you click on the direct select tool for me, there you go.
This one?
That's fine. And then click on the line, one of your lines.
Oh, like this one or
Yeah. So
okay.
click on okay, so that looks good. So click on one of those little dotted the residual lines.
So I'm clicking on them and it's not really.
Yeah, I'm just kind of looking to
doing
see what it's
anything.
doing
Yeah.
there.
But it definitely registers it as a path, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I would have to get in there and kind of mess with your file and
Yeah.
click around to do it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. At least it's
Now,
not like super.
it's not going to even
intrusive,
show
I
up
guess.
when you scale it
Yeah.
down. Whatever. That's
But
good.
I mean, it doesn't
Yeah.
show up too much.
Okay.
All right. Cool.
Nice job.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else for today? All right, guys. Have a good Veterans Day Thursday. We'll be back on Tuesday. Email me your files and we'll take it from there. Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, you too.